Okay, we've got The Last Leaf by O. Henry. We're going to be right at the top. In a little district west of Washington Square, the streets have run crazy and broken themselves into small strips called places. These places make strange angles and curves. One street crosses itself a time or two. An artist once discovered a valuable possibility in this street. Suppose a collector with a bill for paints, paper, and canvas should, in traversing this route, suddenly meet himself coming back without a cent having been paid on account. So, to old, quaint Greenwich Village, the art people soon came prowling, hunting for north windows and 18th century gables and Dutch attics and low rents. Then they imported some pewter mugs and a chafing dish or two from 6th Avenue and became a colony. Where does this story take place?
Greenwich Village.
It's pronounced Greenwich, although yes, it is spelled Greenwich. It's a section of New York City, okay? And it's really artsy, all right? So that's where we're taking place. That's where it's taking place. Do me a favor, raise your hand if you've ever been in New York City. 1, 2, 3, 4 of you. I've been, but only once, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I know it particularly well. I don't. I just know that Greenwich Village is a section of New York City. At the top of a squatty 3-story brick, Sue and Jauncey had their studio. Jauncey was familiar for Joanna. One was from Maine, the other from California. They had met at the table d'hote of an 8th Street Delmonico's and found their tastes in art, chicory salad, and bishop sleeves so congenial that the joint studio resulted. So we've got these two girls. What are their names?
Sue and Jauncey.
Sue and Jauncey. And they became friends because they had so many things in common, which is not an uncommon thing to happen in life. That was in May. In November, a cold, unseen stranger, whom the doctors called pneumonia, stalked about the colony, touching one here and there with his icy fingers. Over on the east side, this ravager strode boldly, smiting his victims by scores, but his feet trod slowly through the maze of the narrow and moss-grown places. Mr. Pneumonia was not what you would call a chivalric old gentleman. A mite of a little woman with blood thinned by California zephyrs was hardly fair game for the red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. But Jauncey he smote, and she lay, scarcely moving on her painted iron bedstead, looking through the small Dutch window panes at the blank side of the next brick house. So, what happened to Jauncey?
He got pneumonia.
She got pneumonia, okay? I've never had pneumonia. Have any of you guys ever had pneumonia?
I don't think I did.
It's like a terrible breathing issue. Raise your hand if you've had pneumonia. Okay. People die of pneumonia, all right? It's super duper serious, all right?
Yeah,
Unfortunately, what's that?
Nowadays, it's not too serious, but it can still kill.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people that died of COVID, actually, it developed into pneumonia, and the pneumonia is what killed them. Let's keep going. One morning, the busy doctor invited Sue into the hallway with a shaggy gray eyebrow. She has one chance in, let us say, 10, he said, as he shook down the mercury in his clinical thermometer, and that chance is for her to want to live. This way people have of lining up on the side of the undertaker makes the entire pharmacopoeia look silly. Your little lady has made up her mind that she's not going to get well. Has she anything on her mind? She wanted to paint the Bay of Naples someday, said Sue. Paint? Bosh! Has she anything on her mind worth thinking about twice? A man, for instance. A man? Said Sue with a Jew's harp twang in her voice. Is a man worth... But no, doctor, there's nothing of the kind. Well, it is the weakness then, said the doctor. I will do that all that science, so far as it may filter through my efforts, can accomplish. But whenever my patient begins to count the carriages in her funeral procession, I subtract 50% from the curative power of medicine. If you will go back, get her to ask one question about the new winter styles in cloak sleeves, I will promise you a 1 in 5 chance for her instead of 1 in 10. Let's stop and let's look back. You ready, Tyler? It says, whenever my patient begins to count the carriages in her funeral procession, I subtract 50% from the curative power of medicine. That was one of your questions you had to answer yesterday. What's that mean? Go ahead, Johanna.
Because she kind of wants to die. Like, it's the scene. I don't know how to say it.
You're on the right track, but you're not quite there. Tyler.
She's like, she knows she's not gonna make it, and she knows she's not gonna be able to get through this.
Also on the right track, but not quite there. Michael.
You have to have hope to get through the sickness as well as the medicine. Even if the medicine does work, you still have to think you're going to get better.
That's right. He's saying that anytime he has a patient, whether it's John C. or somebody down the street, doesn't matter. Anytime he has a patient, when they start to actually believe that they're not going to make it, he says the medicine kind of can't help them. They have to believe that they're going to get well in order for the treatment to work. That makes sense, doesn't it? All right, let's keep going. After the doctor had gone, Sue went into the workroom and cried a Japanese napkin to a pulp. Then she swaggered into Johnson's room with her drawing board, whistling ragtime. Johnson lay, scarcely making a ripple under the bedclothes, with her face toward the window. Sue stopped whistling, thinking she was asleep. She arranged her board and began a pen and ink drawing to illustrate a magazine story. Young artists must pave their way to art by drawing pictures for magazine stories that young authors write to pave their way to literature. As Sue was sketching a pair of elegant horseshoe riding trousers and a monocle on the figure of the hero, an Idaho cowboy, she heard a low sound, several times repeated. She went quickly to the bedside. Johnson's eyes were open wide. She was looking out the window and counting backward. 12, she said, and a little later, 11, and then 10, and 9, and then 8, and 7, almost together. Sue looked solicitously out of the window. What was there to count? There was only a bare, dreary yard to be seen, and the blank side of the brick house 25 feet away. An old ivy vine, gnarled and decayed at the roots, climbed halfway up the brick wall. The cold breath of autumn had stricken its leaves from the vine until its skeleton branches clung, almost bare, to the crumbling bricks. What is Johnson counting?
The leaves on the ivy.
She's counting the leaves on the ivy. She started with 12, then 11, 10, 9. Now I want y'all to notice this right here, by the way. It says, the cold breath of autumn had stricken its leaves from the vine. What do we have an example of right there?
Personification.
We have personification. Autumn doesn't really have a breath, does it? It's talking about the cold air. It's kind of, the leaves change, right? Let's keep going. What is it, dear? Asked Sue. 6, said Johnson in almost a whisper. They're falling faster now. 3 days ago, there were almost 100. It made my head ache to count them, but now it's easy. There goes another one. There are only 5 left now. 5 what, dear? Tell your Sudie. Leaves. On the ivy vine. When the last one falls, I must go too. I've known that for 3 days. Didn't the doctor tell you? Oh, I never heard of such nonsense, complained Sue with magnificent scorn. What have old ivy leaves to do with your getting well? And you used to love that vine so. Why, the doctor told me this morning that your chances for getting well real soon were... Let's see exactly what he said. He said the chances were 10 to 1. Is that really what he said?
No.
He said 1 in 10. By the way, what would the percentage of 1 in 10 be?
10%.
Yeah, that's not a very good chance. Why, that's almost as good as we have in New York when we ride on the streetcars or walk past a new building. Try to take some broth now and let Sudie go back to her drawing so she can sell the editor man with it and buy port wine for her sick child and pork chops for her greedy self. You needn't get any more wine, said Johnson, keeping her eyes fixed out the window. There goes another. No, I don't want any broth. That leaves just 4. I want to see the last one fall before it gets dark. Then I'll go too. Johnson, dear, said Sue, bending over her, will you promise me to keep your eyes closed and not look out the window until I am done working? I must hand these drawings in by tomorrow. I need the light, or I would, Draw the shade down. Couldn't you draw in the other room? Asked Johnsy coldly. I'd rather be here by you, said Sue, because I don't want you to keep looking at those silly ivy leaves. Tell me as soon as you have finished, said Johnsy, closing her eyes and lying white and still as a fallen statue, because I want to see the last one fall. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of thinking. I want to turn loose my hold on everything and go sailing down, down, just like one of those poor tired leaves. So what does Johnsy say she's ready to do?
Die.
Yeah, she's saying, I'm so sick, I'm ready to die, and when the last leaf falls, I will also die. Positive attitude, isn't it?
Yeah.
Try to sleep, said Sue. I must call Berman up to be my model for the old hermit miner. I'll not be gone a minute. Don't try to move till I come back. Old Berman was a painter who lived on the ground floor beneath them. He was past 60 and had a Michelangelo's Moses beard curling up from the head of a satyr along the body of an imp. Berman was a failure in art. 40 years he had wielded the brush without getting near enough to touch the hem of his mistress's robe. He had been always about to paint his masterpiece, but had never yet begun it. For several years he had painted nothing except now and then a daub in the line of commerce or advertising. He earned a little by serving as a model to those young artists in the colony who could not pay the price of a professional. He drank gin to excess and still talked of his coming masterpiece. For the rest, he was a fierce little old man. He scoffed terribly at softness in anyone and who regarded himself as a special mastiff in waiting to protect the two young artists in the studio above. Is Berman a particularly good artist? Not at all. Sue found Berman smelling strongly of juniper berries in his dimly lighted den below. In one corner was a blank canvas on an easel that had been waiting there for 25 years to receive the first line of the masterpiece. She told him of Johnsey's fancy and how he feared that she would, indeed, light and fragile as a leaf herself, float away when her slight hold upon the world grew weaker. Old Berman, with his red eyes plainly streaming, shouted his contempt and derision for such idiotic imaginings. Bas! He cried. Is there people in the world bid their foolishness to die because leaves they drop off from a confounded vine? I have not heard of such a thing. No, I will not pose as a model for your fool hermit dunderhead. Why do you allow that silly business to come in their brain of her? Ack, that poor little Miss Johnsy. When y'all read that yesterday, did y'all wonder what the heck he was saying?
Oh, no, I understood him.
You got it? Raise your hand if you got it.
I didn't have it.
Getting it on the second try is fine. Getting it on the 10th try is fine, just as long as you get it. What?
This one's like completely different than yours.
Yeah, there's two
It's
different
like
stories.
yeah, I had to different.
So, it's what?
More easier to read. It's like different.
More easier.
Yeah, easy.
You mean easier?
Yeah. I had that.
Well, that's not exciting. I didn't realize that.
It had different words than what he said. He barely even said.
Yeah,
it.
the beginning was a lot different.
Let me see yours, Johanna.
I had that one yesterday. That's like.
I did.
Bro, you should get it. That's why I was confused.
I didn't-
It's easier to
Yeah, I got that easier part too. Yeah.
Hold on, let me see here. Well, it's saying the same thing. It's just they just made it Englishy. But it's the same thing. All right, I like this one better. Here we go. She is very ill and weak, said Sue, and the fever has left her mind morbid and full of strange fancies. Very well, Mr. Berman. If you do not care to pose for me, you needn't. But I think you're a horrid old flibber tick-a-bit. I'll take this jacket off. It's hot in here. Are y'all hot?
Oh yeah, little.
All right, let's keep going. You are just like a woman, yelled Berman. Who said I will not pose? Go on, I commit you. For half an hour I have been trying to say that I am ready to pose. God, this is not any place in which one so good as Miss Yancey shall lie sick. Someday I will paint a masterpiece and we shall all go away. God, yes. Johnsy was sleeping when they went upstairs. She pulled the shade down to the windowsill and motioned Berman into the other room. In there they peered out the window fearfully at the ivy vine. Then they looked at each other for a moment without speaking. A persistent cold rain was falling, mingled with snow. Berman, in his old blue shirt, took his seat as the hermit miner on an upturned kettle for a rock. When Sue awoke from an hour's sleep the next morning, she found Jauncey with dull, wide-open eyes, staring at the drawn green shade. "Pull it up. I want to see," she ordered in a whisper. Wearily, Sue obeyed. But lo, after the beating rain and fierce gusts of wind that had endured through the livelong night, there yet stood out against the brick wall one ivy leaf. It was the last on the vine, still dark green near its stem, but with its serrated edges tinted with the yellow of dissolution and decay. It hung bravely from a branch some 20 feet above the ground. "It is the last one," said Jauncey. "I thought it would surely fall during the night. I heard the wind. It will fall today, and I shall die at the same time." "Dear, dear," said Sue, leaning her worn face down to the pillow. "Think of me if you won't think of yourself. What would I do?" But Jauncey did not answer. The lonesomest thing in all the world is a soul when it is making ready to go on its mysterious, far journey. The fancy seemed to possess her more strongly, as one by one the ties that bound her to friendship and to earth were loosed. The day wore away, and even through the twilight they could see the lone ivy leaf clinging to its stem against the wall. And then, with the coming of the night, the north wind was again loosed, while the rain still beat against the windows and pattered down from the low Dutch eaves. When it was light enough, Jauncey, the merciless, commanded that the shade be raised. The ivy leaf was still there. Jauncey lay for a long time looking at it, and then she called to Sue, who was stirring her chicken broth over the gas stove. "I've been a bad girl, Sudie," said Jauncey. "Something has made that last leaf stay there to show me how wicked I was. It is a sin to want to die. You may bring me a little broth now, and some milk with a little port in it, and... No, bring me a hand mirror first, and then pack some pillows about me, and I will sit up and watch you cook." An hour later she said, "Sudie, someday I hope to paint the Bay of Naples." The doctor came in the afternoon, and Sue had an excuse to go into the hallway as he left. "Even chances," said the doctor, taking Sue's thin, shaking hand in his. "With good nursing, you'll win. And now I must see another case I have downstairs. Berman, his name is. Some kind of artist, I believe. Pneumonia, too. He is an old, weak man, and the attack is acute. There is no hope for him, but he goes to the hospital today to be made more comfortable." The next day, the doctor said to Sue, "She's out of danger. You've won. Nutrition and care now. That's all." That afternoon, Sue came to the bed where Jauncey lay, contentedly knitting a very blue and very useless woolen shoulder scarf, and put one arm around her, pillows and all. "I have something to tell you," she said. "Mr. Berman died of pneumonia today in the hospital. He was ill only 2 days. The janitor found him on the morning of the first day in his room, downstairs, helpless with pain. His shoes and clothing were wet through and icy cold. They couldn't imagine where he had been on such a dreadful night. And then they found a lantern, still lighted, and a ladder that had been dragged from its place, and some scattered brushes, and a palette with green and yellow colors mixed on it, and... Look out the window, dear, at the last ivy leaf on the wall. Didn't you wonder why it never fluttered or moved when the wind blew? Darling, it's Berman's masterpiece. He painted it there the night that the last leaf fell."